Okay, so we were talking about the ending of the story, and now you can see that the last couple paragraphs here uh, explained what happened to Fred Sesampala and what he thinks is going on with the, what needs to be done. And so you have an ending that really, I think, finishes off the story and gives you a good uh, echo of what's on the beginning. Okay. We can go back up here and see some of the other sections here, ditching the addiction. So we move that actually down to the last. Lessons from other countries is one, and then responsible gaming. And notice how he uses quotes in here. So each section, we're going to talk about connecting the dots. Each section can become its own little story. Because the gaming sector is a huge contributor to the consolidated fund, abolishing gaming is out of the question. Jacqueline Kamakuna, if I'm saying that wrong, I deeply apologize. The corporate responsibility and responsible gaming office says the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board is championing a set of initiatives. Okay, so this is really good writing right in here. He introduces a topic in the first paragraph. He introduces the speaker with some information about what the national board is doing, and then he has a quote. And so this is a good way to organize each section of your story. You can have a big long story, and you're going to have these different sections. You make a point, introduce a point. Okay, uh, abolishing the game is out of the question. Okay, then you elaborate or you explain that point, and then you elaborate on that point. Okay, so it's point, explanation, elaboration. And the elaboration oftentimes comes in the form of a quote. And then you can move down to another point. The board is also partnering with operators to create Responsible Gaming Foundation. And then a little bit more explanation, has taken enforcement exercises, and then, oops, excuse me, and then another quote. Okay, point, explanation, or sometimes it just expands what's in the point up here, and the elaboration, which is in the form of a quote. This is good writing. Okay, lessons from other countries, and here I think is kind of the to me was the boring part of it because he does not have that human element in it. Okay, but yet it's good information and that might really interest people. So responsible gaming. Let's go up to the next section, government response. And it talks about the Lotteries and Gaming Act mandates this, okay? And then again, he makes a point. He introduces the speaker, what they're doing, and then the nice elaboration in the form of a quote. And then, according to law, customers in betting shops have to be 25 years old. So here's a point about what the law says. And then again, elaboration in the form of a quote. And then casino games, uh, different kinds of gambling are only legalized forms of gaming in Uganda. The turnover from gaming, okay, so it talks some more about tax income. And then another quote. And the quote here is elaboration, but it also introduces important information that 3 trillion shillings come from online gaming, which to me is a really important point. The fact that we have this problem in our country now where young people have their phones and they can bet on the games. They can bet during the games. Will he make the next basket in basketball, or what's will Messi score a goal in the second half of the game? And it's all on the phones, and it's so easy that it can be a real problem. And then 5 registered online gaming operators, and then elaborating that you have to have an NIN to enroll in our system, and I guess that would be a national identity card. Am I correct on that? NIN. something like that. National identity number. That would be. And then talks about the call center, adds that some gamblers are self-aware and call center the center to deactivate their accounts if they feel they are crossing the point of no return. Okay, so that is really a good section there. Again, point, explanation, elaboration. And then, let's see here, impact on mental health. And we bring Fred back into it. Whenever we want to talk about something that affects people, we want to bring him back into it. He began hating himself because of his inability to save money. I got a second wife because of betting. I could not pay for her delivery costs. So he tells about some of the trouble he's having. And then he introduces an expert here to talk about some of the health issues that can come from gambling. And so that's a interesting section. It's a short section, but it's a good one. And then let's go up here, psychology of gambling addiction. And so here again, and this was, I think, up higher in the story, but it made more sense here. At a plush location on the outskirts of Kampala City, a group of young men sit in a circle around a psychologist. And here's your observational stuff. Surrounded by lush green plants, their faces hold a host of emotions, hope and regret mainly. The sessions, which happen every Tuesday, are held in Luganda. The psychologist hired by the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board is helping them navigate the challenges on the road to recovery. Now, I think what I left out here is that Fred Sesapala is in this group. And I think I should have that mention that somewhere in this part of the lead of this section. They clapped for a peer who spent 2 weeks without betting. I mean, this is really good observational kinds of things. His charges assure that female addicts exist, although they are very few. A psychiatrist says the diagnosis of addiction can be made. One has to have impaired control. So this is interesting here. You can't just go in and say, I have a gambling addiction. You have to demonstrate, to get, I guess, to get a referral or to get the diagnosis, you have to demonstrate that you don't have control over yourself. Okay. And so someone saying they're going to play only one game but ends up playing the whole night would be lack of control. And so forth. It affects children as well. So here's another section that's really well done. A point, explanation, maybe a sub-point in there. Here we have back up to the lead now, okay? And we go through quite a bit in the lead of telling about Fred, stealing. He was working for a juice company. They went broke because he stole from them. He sold his bicycle. He turned to boda riding, which I'm not quite sure what that is. And beside biting all his earnings, he turned to petty theft to feed his habit. So explaining just how devastating this can be, but high up in the story. See, in that right here, we're just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs into the story, and we're deeply into Fred Sesampala's troubles. And then here's a really great story. One day he traveled to Kayunga district to buy goats, and he had 200,000 shillings. But when he reached Nakafuma, he went to a betting shop and lost all the money. The tipping point came when he gambled 300,000 shillings he had set aside to pay for his wife's delivery expenses. The midwives abandoned his wife because he could not buy a mama kit and other medical supplies, and his wife lost the baby. So this is, I mean, this makes you want to read more, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we've kind of worked backwards through the story here, but the pattern he adopts here is really what I'm talking about, and that is connecting the dots through transition to each major point, point, explanation, elaboration, and then maybe there's a second part of that point or a sub point, explanation, elaboration, like that down the story. So you can see feature writing is really pretty easy. All it takes is just somebody said, to write a good feature story, all you have to do is sit down and open a vein and let it bleed. And it's sort of like that. But it really, you can really write these things by formula. And then what's within that formula, that's where your skill as a writer comes in. And that's where Walter here has really shines as his skill in putting together good, solid sentences, good, solid paragraphs that stick to one point, introducing speakers and then quoting them effectively. And the so when you look at, if you go back to this story again, look at it as a matter of organization more than anything else, and assume that you can do the other. I'm assuming you can do the other things. You can interview people, get good quotations from them. You can look up information. You can call people up and get information. You can go to this counseling session and observe what's going on and tell that story. One thing I would have wanted to see more would be just a paragraph giving us a description of Fred, so we could kind of see him in our mind. You know, Fred is a tall and slim, showing the effects of not eating well because he spends his money on gambling, something like that. You know, so that we could see him a little better. And that might be the one thing that he did. But this is again a good story that lacks proper organization. And so I think Fred had, Fred, I think Martin has both versions of this story, and you can compare them and see what I'm talking about. And you can also go back to the Monitor and look at the original story. Now, if you have questions,